Thankfully, the Game Boy Advance didn't suffer to quite the same extent as some of the earlier Nintendo consoles when it came to RPGs being released in the West, whether that was down to Final Fantasy kicking off in a big way towards the end of the 90s, or the Pokemon phenomenon that opened the genre to about a bajillion new fans. Finally, we'd start to see these amazing Japanese role-playing games get English language ports. I mean, Europe still got a raw deal sometimes. No Chrono Trigger until 2009? Arseholes. Still, Japan certainly never sent us everything. Every library out there holds one or two little gems that publishers kept hold of for one reason or another. In my spare time, at least 3 video reviews a week and I still have free time? Try harder. I've just got done playing the phenomenal JP exclusive Game Boy RPG, God Medicine, and let me tell you, it ain't just the NAF stuff they keep behind. That game is very, very good. The Game Boy Advance was no exception and had its own small handful of JRPGs that were still a cut above the norm, despite only being in Japanese. We got Earthbound, of course. Well, Europe didn't, also of course. But what about Mothers 1 and 3? Japan got all 3 Mother games on Game Boy Advance. The rest of the world was deprived. Outside of the more obvious, there's Magical Vacation and even a couple of Full Metal Alchemist titles to come, and this little beauty. Amazingly, some of these have had full English translations done by fans, seeing as how Nintendo clearly have no interest in doing so, and so we can, fortunately, experience them without having to painstakingly translate everything. It's been made a little trickier with the recent sad demise of romhacking.net, which was basically the go-to hub for all things fan translations, but you can still do it if you just look for a bit. The game might look like it's a standalone adventure, but it's actually part of Hudson's Tengai Makyo, Far East of Eden franchise. I must admit to not knowing a great deal about this, as basically all the games in the series are Japanese exclusives. Starting on the Turbo CD way back in 1989, the majority of Tengai Makyo titles are also RPGs, but there were also a couple of action games in the mid-90s as well. I'm sure some of the super knowledgeable members of my community can educate the rest of us, but if they're anything like this one, I'd be delighted to play some of them. Oriental Blue places a lot of focus on chatting to NPCs to find quest markers or clues of where to go next. As such, there's a ton of text to read, making it both vital to get the translation patch, and even more impressive that such a thing exists as complete as it does. I don't know if I'd say the game is as non-linear as something open world like Elder Scrolls, but you certainly have a lot of freedom in choosing where to go next. Large swathes of the map are open to you from the off, and you're not going to be handheld in the direction of the next town or dungeon. In fact, unless you're incredibly thorough, you're quite likely to miss something, a side quest here or even a potential party member there. RPGs will traditionally augment your team with companions periodically as you get to a certain town or pass a certain checkpoint. That's not the case here. A story beat might occur that introduces you to another protagonist, such as the ogre kid stealing these horns from a lord, but then it'll be up to you to go after that kid to battle and then recruit him. He might even only be available up to a certain point. Not only that, but other party members only become available should you choose the right combinations of actions. These aren't always intuitive, unfortunately, but definitely do encourage multiple playthroughs. Reasonably early on, there are 1 or 2 instances where your choices affect who you can recruit, even though this isn't clear that this is what you're doing. In one of the districts of the main city, you can speak to a particular noble. Now, if you talk to him when the in-game timer's minutes is between 0 and 30, later on you'll meet one character. If the timer is 31 minutes to 59 minutes, you'll get a different one later. Also, you'll be in this haunted tower and come across a huge scroll on a wall. Clicking on it asks whether you want to read it. Say yes, and it'll trigger one character's appearance later on. Ignoring the scroll gives you the other. Arbitrary and cryptic it might be, but just go with it. And there is this air of randomness that perpetuates through the whole game. Hey, it's nothing massively game-changing, but it's always there, making little tweaks to your experience. For example, your starting town isn't fixed, but can be one of several. Whether you decide to play as a boy or a girl has some minor storyline changes also. The non-linearity of the game is one of the more divisive mechanics of Oriental Blue, with one school of thought being that it's sometimes too difficult to know where to go next, and I totally get that idea. It depends how much reading you're prepared to do. Like I say, the game is incredibly text-heavy, which can be a bit overwhelming when trying to keep track of your quests. There is a journal feature which helps a bit, but not everything gets written in there, so if you're trying to deep dive this one, it might even be worth writing some stuff down yourself. Even if you do this, you can't get past the feeling that you're missing some stuff. That's because you are, more than likely, but don't worry about it because there's more than enough to keep you entertained without having to 100% everything. In terms of gameplay, it's your fairly standard turn-based combat scheme where attacks happen based on relative speeds of the combatants. Think Dragon Quest and you've about got it. Magic or skills exist, but are a bit limited. The real defining feature here is the use of these magical stones. Defeating enemies on the overworld will often drop a number of these gem things. They come in like 5 or 6 different basic varieties, and you can hold up to 99 of any one type. You can use these in battle to do elemental damage, or even heal yourself, things like that, or you can fuse up to 4 of them to any weapon or piece of armor. Depending on the object and gem combination in question, this does several things. It can boost the power, defensiveness, or even speed stat attributed to that weapon or armor, or it can increase or decrease the break percentage of the item. Yeah, that happens here, and marks another of the divisive game mechanics. Say a sword has a 25% break rate. That means after every battle, there's a 25% chance it'll be completely destroyed, and you can't repair it either, it's just gone, Breath of the Wild style. Not everything suffers from this. You'll get by just fine using a steel sword for a lot of the game, which can hold a full host of gems without ever breaking. Now, that's not the main thing these elemental stones do, however. You should still do it because it's free stat buffs, but the main thing you can do with these basic stones is fuse them together to create much better ones. You need to assemble the correct gems in a 3x3 grid in the correct pattern, after which you're able to forge much more powerful stones. For instance, while the yellow gem in and of itself is pretty good for doing lightning damage, if you take 3 of them and arrange them in the fusing machine in this triangle pattern, you can create this vastly superior multi-attack lightning stone. These are way more effective in battle, and can also be attached to weaponry and armor for even better buffs. It's a really cool system if you're prepared to put the time into it, and even feels kind of obligatory in parts because the bosses in-game are very tough indeed. Your choices are clever use of elemental weaknesses and the correct augmented stones, or a shit ton of grinding to get over-leveled. Note as well that not every character can use every stone. Each one requires MP to use, but also a certain wisdom level. For instance, the stronger lightning attack I mentioned requires a wisdom stat of 35, so it's likely that not every character in your party will understand how it works. How do you get these recipes, you might be wondering? Well, some of them will be revealed to you by NPCs, as per usual in a slightly cryptic manner sometimes, or you can trial and error them. This'll take a lot of time, as you might expect. Being a non-straightforward system and having many different combos to use, I sort of suspect this was to sell some player's guides, but you can of course look up an FAQ. Seriously, do that. We'd be remiss not to touch on the presentation, which is top draw throughout. Some actually fascinating music here. The game has a very obvious Far Eastern theme, and the soundtrack certainly reflects that, but not in a cliched way. It's done very tastefully and adds to the atmosphere impeccably. The game's graphics are not overstated. The color schemes feel a bit muted throughout compared to a lot of GBA games, but believe me when I say that this adds to the ambiance too. You don't want vibrant Zelda-esque palettes here. This is a much more serious feeling affair for sure. The sprite work is incredible, especially for the bosses, which are often monstrous and grotesque, but equally often representative of much more forlorn and sad characters. Incredibly well considered throughout. I've praised the arse off Oriental Blue so far, and for good reason. It's certainly not a flawless game though, there are a couple of irritants. At times, the difficulty spikes like nobody's business. It can feel quite unbalanced in places, especially the bosses, where you could one-shot every enemy in an area, then get completely bodied by the dungeon boss. I hope you like grinding, or at the very least have an auto-fire button, as the random encounters are plentiful. Even within cities, you're not safe. This is all explained away in storyline. Plenty of characters will opine at how dangerous the world is becoming for them, and it's reflected as you're trying to walk around. Some kind of repel mechanic would have gone a long way though. The immersion factor is through the roof, especially if you take the time to allow yourself to get sucked into the world. Do talk to as many people as you can. The translation patch is incredibly faithful to the expected tone, and incredibly well written, and really dive into the problems this world faces. I've not even mentioned what the main storyline is. That's because there are several, none of which are ever forced down your throat at any point. perhaps the Elder Scrolls comparison wasn't as wild as I first thought. Sure, you might be the Dragonborn, but you're also Archmage, head of the Thieves Guild, and, of course, Temba Widearm needs those bloody bear pelts.